everyone, especially to you, sir. We are the Group 2 reporter and our topic is about utilitarianism. At first, we will introduce ourselves. I am Tagyong Cristala.
I am Kataan Katiling.
I am Kapanan Jokong Jane.
I am Jordan Militan.
I am Charmaine Kunsay.
I am Purin GL.
I'm Evergreen Miranda.
And I am Lovely Mabaw.
And I am Pupi Vinci.
And I am Ramilin Mako. I am Angel Otto.
And I am Miro Sibla.
So, good morning again. So, we will talk about the context of Bentham's moral philosophy, but first, we will know who is Bentham. So, Bentham is an English philosopher, jurist, and social reformer regarded as the modern founder of the utilitarianism. So, he was born on the legal positivism and the liberalism and Epicureanism, and his main interest is the political philosophy, philosophy of law, ethics, and economics. And his notable ideas is the greatest happiness principle and the radical consequentialism. Jeremy Bentham died on June 6, 1832 at the age of 84. So, after we know the background of Jeremy Bentham, we will now focus on the main topic, which is the utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is founded on the principle of utility, which means the belief that an action is morally good if it produces or promotes happiness to the greatest number of people, and it is bad or immoral if it produces pain or suffering. In utilitarianism act is an good or morally right if it produces greatest happiness to the greatest number of people, and bad or immoral if it produces more harm or pain than benefits. So this explains that the utilitarian would not care whether the action is done by deception, lie, and manipulation. So it says nga, bisan pa ka nang nakay mabuhat na mali, basta kay maghatag na yung kalipay sa kanang sa kadaghanan, for Bentham, it is a good action. Pero kung ang imuhang gibuhat is tama, pero wala siya naghatag o kalipay sa greatest number of people, for Bentham, it is bad action. So, in the book of Introduction to the Principle of Moral Legislation in 1789, Bentham began by arguing that our action is governed by two master, which means katong pleasure and happiness, ay pleasure and pain. These master are given to us to help us to determine what is good and bad, what is ought to be done and not. So, Jeremy Bentham, yahan na siyang gibuhat para yahan na siyang nakitaan, then pagkabalo niya he decided to himo sa kanang hedonistic calculus, which is katong measurement of happiness, measurement of pleasure and pain. Bentham's idea is that when we make a moral decision, the right action is ang right action guys, mao siya dapat ang pinakalabaw nga atong buhaton. So ang tawag niya is the utility or the utilitarian. Bentham considered the three moral position, which is first his own view of utilitarian. Second is the principle of sympathy and antipathy, which approves or disapproves of action purely on the basis of person's attitude. Last one is the principle of asceticism, which is mirror of the utilitarianism. And lastly is the three fundamental conviction, which is Jeremy Bentham believed that morality requires everyone to be treated as one. So it means na each one of us should be treated right, and dapat nga bisan pa o natay mabuhat na sala, we should be equally treated dapat. And second is Bentham believed that ultimately the only things in the world that matters is the pleasure and pain. So ano siya na ang importante lang dariya sa kalibutan is ang pleasure of pain. And lastly is the Bentham was convinced that morality and good governance has to be based on principle. Ano po si Jeremy Bentham nga dapat ang mga principle lang mga law is dapat naka-align siya sa kanang principle nga kanang makatabang sa kadaghanan. So, in short, the utilitarianism is the principle that will make each of one of us benefited or mas benefit siya sa ato. That's it.
Bentham says that people do not naturally want pain. So, Bentham argues that no human being genuinely chooses pain for its own sake. So, people try to avoid pain unless they think there is a benefit afterward. So, people accept pain only if it leads to a future pleasure. According to Bentham, people choose something painful, they do it because they expect a positive outcome. For example, as a college student, if we have an exam for tomorrow, so we spend studying a lot of hours in the evening. So even if it's tiring, we actually kanang mag-study gapon ta, it's because maka-benefit ta na later on to have a better grade. So, ascetic practice are actually motivated by future rewards. Religious or moral people who practice self-denial are not doing it because it brings spiritual reward. Then, asceticism becomes similar to utilitarianism because Bentham believes that asceticism still follows the idea of choosing an action that gives the best outcome, which is similar to utilitarianism. It's just that ascetics think the best outcome is spiritual pleasure. Bentham rejects asceticism because it opposes human happiness. He believes that pain should never be encouraged unless it leads to greater happiness, which is the morality for him. Should focus on increasing pleasure and reducing suffering. Asceticism, therefore, is unnecessary and harmful when it is used to deny people harmless pleasures in life. So that's it.
So, good morning everyone. So, the next topic is elimination of sympathy and antipathy. So, this refers to decision based on what someone likes or dislikes. So, Bentham believed this was unreliable because people's feelings differ. Instead, he wanted a consistent principle, maximize happiness for everyone affected, not just follow personal preferences. So the passage talks about philosophical ideas that say we shouldn't base a moral decision on personal feeling of liking, sympathy, disliking as antipathy. So we should use clear rule or principles to judge what is right or wrong, because relying on feeling can lead us to biases or inconsistency. So for example, a man stole food because his family was hungry. So the judge felt sorry for him, so he wanted to let him go. But according to Bentham theory, that says no. The law, you should follow the law. So the judge must think what will make everyone happiest, so that maybe the answer is we should help the man find a job so that he can feed or provide his family instead of putting him into jail. That's it.
So the next is clarifying utilitarianism is the view that the right action is the one that produces the greatest happiness for the greatest number. It's a simple outcome based on theory. So there are two theories, the right and good. So the right is wrong and right. So wrong and right is a freedoms or benefits that every person should have just because they are human. So for example, the right to life, freedom of speech, education, and equality. So there are different theories explains rights in different ways. So first,
clarifying a theory of the good. A theory of the good tells us what sort of things in the world are good and bad. So, for BENTHAM, good is pleasure and bad is pain. A theory of good explains what things in the world are considered valuable or desirable. It identifies what is good in itself and what is bad in itself. For Jeremy Bentham, a founder of classical utilitarianism, the theory of the good is simple and direct. Pleasure is the only intrinsic good, and pain is the only intrinsic bad. Bentham's theory forms the basis of his moral principle. The right action is the one produce the greatest amount of pleasure and the less amount of pain. For the greatest number of people, a theory of good explains what things in the world are considered valuable or desirable. It identifies what is good in itself and what is bad in itself. Example, if someone says knowledge is good, their theory of the good says knowledge has value by itself. For Jeremy Bentham, the founder of classic materialism, pleasure is the only intrinsic good. Example, eating your favorite food, listening to music, or spending time with friends are good because they bring pleasure. And pain is the only intrinsic bad. Example, eating, injured, being insulted, or feeling sick are bad because they cause pain. This means that nothing is good or bad on its own except for the pleasure or pain it produces. All the things such as wealth, health, or knowledge are valuable and only because they bring about pleasure or reduce pain. Example, money is not good in itself. It's good because it can buy things that make us happy or prevent suffering like medicine or food. In summary, Bentham's theory of the good holds that pleasure is the ultimate goal of human action and pain is what should avoided. This simple idea supports his broader utilitarian approach to ethics.
Each and everyone. So the next topic is all about the Bentham's theory of good. So for Bentham, happiness is a pleasure and the absence of pain. No pleasure is better or nobler than another, only the amount matters. All pleasures count equally, whether simple or complex. So Jeremy Bentham's view of utilitarianism focuses on the history of good, which defines what things are good and bad. According to Bentham, happiness as pleasure is the only thing that is good, and unhappiness as pain is the only bad thing. He believes all the pleasures count equally. There are no higher or lower pleasures, only differences is amount. For example, there are the two options, which is the first is help a friend with homework, so you feel good for helping, so that is a pleasure. And also, your friend understands the lesson, it's also the pleasure. Option B is ignoring your friend and play games instead. So you feel pleasure while playing, but your friend feels stress, that is a pain. So that's all.
Next, measuring happiness. Bentham believes that happiness can be measured almost like doing math. He said we can decide if an action is good or bad by checking how much pleasure or happiness is bring. To do this, he creates something called hedonistic calculation, which is like checklist. It's as like how strong is happiness, how long will it last, how sure are we that it will happen, how many people will feel the happiness. By looking at this, we can calculate which action brings the most happiness. So for Bentham, morality is about choosing the action that gives the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people.
equality between sexes, believing it would lead to a happier and more fulfilling society by allowing women to develop their abilities to contribute fully. Classically utilitarianism focuses on the total good, some critics argue it can conflict with equality as it might not prioritize fair contribution of well-being. However, a modern utilitarian approach of feminism views gender equality as a crucial path to increase happiness for all.
The subjection of women from Mill's utilitarian perspective. John Stuart Mill, influenced by utilitarian, and his wife Harriet Taylor argued strongly against the dominations of women, especially in marriage, and the subjections of women. 1869, Mill compares marriage under male dominations to slavery because wives have almost no rights or independence. He believed this inequality caused great harm to human happiness. So Mill gave several utilitarian arguments for why women should be liberated. So first is subjugation harms men. Men grow up believing they are superior to women. So this false belief leads to arrogance and makes them unhappy in the long run. Second is society will up its talent, excluding women from work, especially important professions like law and medicine, means losing half of society's potentials. Emancipations would double the mental resources available to humanity. So third is economic dependence versus conventional limited lives. Married women could not own property and relied entirely on husband. So, this reverse caused men to choose safe, unfulfilling careers just to support their families and secure good marriage for their daughters. So fourth is woman suffering decreases overall happiness. So women in subjection experience is loss of personal enjoyment, disappointment, and deep dissatisfactions with life.
So next is justifying utilitarianism. So Bentham assumes we naturally want pleasure and avoid pain. So Bentham believed that people naturally want pleasure and avoid pain. Since this is how humans behave, he said our moral action should be the ones that create the most happiness and at the least suffering for everyone. For example, if you choose to help a friend because it makes them happy and it also makes you feel good, that's good. So that Bentham idea, we have to increase pleasure and reduce pain. So Mill tried to go deeper and explain why happiness should be our moral goal. So Mill agreed with Bentham but wanted to go deeper. He said happiness shouldn't just be our goal because we like pleasure, but because happiness is the most valuable thing in life. He believed that a good life is one filled with real happiness, not just fun moments, but meaningful joy and growth. For example, you study hard and to finish school. It's trying at first, but in the end, it gives you a better life and long-term happiness. So Mill would say this higher happiness something that improves your life in a deeper way. So that's all.
So Mel's proof of utilitarianism is Mel argued that people desire happiness, and what people desire is considered good. So therefore, happiness is a good. His proof is not straight logical proof, but more of psychological explanation. So Mel's proof say that the people naturally desire happiness, and whatever utilitarianism is based on increasing happiness. So for example is, if people desire friendship because it makes them happy, so then friendship is considered good. Miles uses this idea to say that happiness itself must be the highest good because every desire it.
So the last topic is aggregating happiness. Utilitarianism requires adding up everyone's happiness. Each person's happiness counts equally. No one is more important than anyone else. That makes utilitarianism democratic, but also leads to hard questions like whether we can sacrifice one person to save many. We should choose action that create the most happiness for everyone. But this is hard to do because people don't always want some same things, and what makes one person happy can make another unhappy. Example, when your team is wins and the other team is lose, so the other team feels like they are lose or wala sila nalipay kay ang other team mo ay nakadaog. So we cannot just add happiness like number because our desires and feelings often conflict. Kanang lipay kay mo tapos ang ubad nila is kana wala sila na lipay kay lagi na pinti. Some people defend utilitarianism by saying it just feels right, but that's not a strong reason because others might say they don't like it kay wala ko ibuhat sa ilahang rason para mapili sila kay wala inyo maghihatag inyong best to win the game. This is why proving utilitarianism is difficult and why many philosophers are frustrated with it. This is exactly the problem Bentham criticized. We can't justify moral theory just based on personal feelings. All summary, utilitarianism as the view that moral right actions are those that maximize overall happiness. Bentham introduced in a scientific calculation-based approach, while Mill refined it and expanded it to social issues like women's rights. The chapter also discussed